Here we are.
Monday again.
It's Monday. That's right. A different one. A special Monday. Because it's
They're
special.
all special.
That's right. That's right. Another edition of Get Found.
And be seen.
That's right. That is right. It's great to be back, Monty.
Always great to be back. Because the alternative... No, let's not think about that. Great to be back.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't want to think about that. And today, we're talking about the intersection of ideal clients and personal presence. Yeah, I like that.
I do too. That happens to be one of my favorites.
Your jam?
My jam. Yeah, I like it. It could be jelly. I don't care.
Yeah, it's all good.
But an ideal client, yeah. Lots of people have been hearing that term a lot. Mm-hmm. Ideal client avatar. Formerly, maybe misinterpreted as target audience.
Right. But it's something different, slightly different. Different, you say, right?
It's more focused. An ideal client is within a target audience. There are many ideal clients within a target audience. So that brings up the question. Well, what are you saying an ideal client is then? Some people might think it's, like I said, the target audience. So if it's not the target audience, then what the heck is it?
Right. Let me pull up my armrest for this conversation.
Getting all set up.
Getting ready. So we should start identifying, right? Like defining.
Yeah. It'd be handy to know what is meant to. So how can you have several in said target audience? Because the ideal client is a person.
Right.
Ooh, let me back up again and say that all over again. An ideal client is a person, not a set of data points. That's the key. That is the key. That's why you have many of them, because if you try and get all the different data points that different people have and you cram them together, you have a bunch of data points. You don't have a person.
Right.
So that's the definition of an ideal client. It's a person. Now, it's a specific person though, because an ideal client has qualities that make them the ideal client. Now, it's not. So there's where the concept can kind of get a little muddied. Ideal client, meaning it's the one that's better than all the rest. Perhaps the wording would be better if it was altered to an ideal client avatar.
Yeah.
There are, of course, going to be some exceptions. There are going to be places and people and circumstances where there is just one. And there's so many of them, they don't need to worry about any other one.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it's different portions of the journey. It's the same person, but they evolve. And so therefore, they're a different person.
Right. Different person, different place, different part of their individual journey.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
I love that, because that really cuts to it and gets into it, and it humanizes the person, which is the whole point. This is about relationships.
Right. If you want to resonate, if you want to communicate, which is a two-way street, then you need to talk to the human. There's a lot of AI chatting going on, and not that necessarily it's bad in the right circumstances.
Right.
But when you claim it to be human connection and you're automating this human engagement, I'm starting to have a problem with that.
Oh, yeah. We're seeing that everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yep. All the social media platforms.
Not to go off topic too far, but now it's getting to the point where I question every connection request that comes in. It
That's
used to
real.
be, there's somebody sent a message with it. Wow, they put some extra effort into it. Maybe there's an AI thing doing it for them. And that just, it loses the emphasis. It's no longer a special message. It's just
Right.
another message.
Yes, it's watered down. And sometimes the effort.
Through to the
What was that?
ideal client. I said that does tie back through to the ideal client.
Absolutely.
By
Absolutely.
defining that ideal client as a person, you can talk to that person. If they're just a set of data points, then you're just chatting. Ooh,
Yeah.
I'm
I
gonna
like
coin a
that.
new phrase.
Yeah.
Some people who like to use the word, hey, let's chat about that. Maybe they'll get upset because now if I start implying, well, chatting means there's an AI bot involved. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm getting a little frustrated with. I don't know. Does that comment on my post a real person's comment
Right.
or not?
Which is tough. That makes it tough for the person using AI, but also for the person not using AI. Because if it's real, you don't know. And if the person receiving it, like me or you or anyone online receiving it, there's that doubt and that hesitation in someone's mind. So thank you for another barrier.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. On one hand, I don't want to feed the AI.
Yeah.
I don't want to respond to an AI driven response. But if it's a human reaching out, I don't want to not at least connect a little bit.
Right.
Even if they're not an ideal client, or even if they're not a collaborator or someone that I would want to continue any relations with. Just
Right.
having that first, finding that out on a human level. We have so much of this filtering because old school thinking. Well, okay, we'll say this really quick for another topic, but there's so many people on the planet now, you don't need to reach everybody.
Right.
So an ideal client is start reaching people on a deeper level. This is for the introverts. We love this. Let's connect with people a little bit more. I'd rather go to a convention and walk away with 3 people's contacts that I really, really connected with and feel like we got some kind of connection. Let's be redundant. Rather than have 100 people's phone numbers and barely remember who they are.
Right. And not be personable.
So the ideal client, defining an ideal client helps us focus in and do that so that we can talk to a person. That's why it's define a person. Then you can talk to that person. And then I'm sure that if you've ever talked to anybody in a group of people, that you're talking to one person, and you're in the group, but you're not talking to the group, you're talking to one person. Just happens to be other people around.
Right.
When someone else says, yeah,
Hmm.
I've had that happen. I'm in a group of people, but the group aren't a group. They just happen to be in the same space. So it's I'm talking to this person. It's like a restaurant or cafe or something, and it's like, not to be eavesdropping, but what you're saying there, I resonate with that.
Right.
Sometimes it's about sports or music or a job feeling the jobs, the way a job's making you feel.
Right.
The
Right.
emotional stuff, things that make
Right.
you emotional. That's what we resonate with. And that's why you can't talk to a set of data points and expect a set of data points to get all emotional with you.
Right. Right. You got to come for the person. I agreed 100%. And that's so important, because like you mentioned, you do want to connect with them. And I love saying conversation. There's something, there's something about that word, you know, besides, I know you mentioned chat earlier, but I love saying conversation. And when I think about the ideal client, I'm like, that's that opportunity to have that conversation with that individual who you guys can resonate with. And I think about the concept of having lunch with someone. You could have lunch, you could have conversation and go back and forth. And like you mentioned, I love that idea, what you mentioned as far as someone else coming from another table and saying, excuse me, not to eavesdrop, but those are the best. And because so many great moments come from that. And so, relating to your ideal client, that's the feeling that you want to bring, in my opinion.
Yes. And trying to segue into the next portion of that, because it's still data driven,
Right.
so to speak, because you're trying to figure out certain things about the person, but they're not just a set of data points, and they're not just a whole bunch of them that are churned up by AI, so to speak.
Right.
That's where possibly this is a great tactic, actually, is singling out an actual human and saying, I was talking with so-and-so the other day, and boy, if I could find another 10 or 20 or 100 people that are just like that person, boy, my life would be so much easier. Right. Guess what? That is an ideal client. Maybe the ideal client, but at least an ideal client. And so you could go to that person and you could just ask them specific questions, and you could really, really define what motivates them, especially if you've already had a relationship with them and you've helped them go from one step to another. Now you can have how did you feel before? How do you feel now? Mm-hmm. And really pinpoint in what it is that was important. Because when they tell you, this is what I feel now, that's the tie together with where someone's at and where they would like to go to. Right.
And what I also love about the whole concept of the ideal client is because I think about a friend, and and I've been hearing a lot about this too from different people like Myron Golden, and really being in the position, in that mindset of serving people, not just serving people, but being obsessed about serving people. But for me, that translates into really caring about that individual, and so so you can serve them better. And I think about this for you, Monty, too. You're really good with this too. You're constantly thinking about someone. You have that person's name on the tip of your tongue and talking about what they need and how you can serve them and what you're working on to help them. So understanding the ideal client, it really sets you up for success to be able to be on that journey with that individual or that ideal client. And so that's powerful, because for me, that wasn't my mindset 2 or 3 years ago, though.
Same.
But it's so much more easier now.
Yep. It takes a little practice, as with many things.
It takes practice. It takes practice.
And it is data, so it takes time to collect and takes time to analyze and find the patterns, because everybody's different. Not only are all the different clients different, but all of the entrepreneurs that are serving the clients are different. And so therefore, they're just human connections are all different. There's no cookie cutter. There's no, let me just set this up and then everybody can just run through this gauntlet and everybody will be my friend.
Right. And that's the challenge, though, because I love what you said. It's not cookie cutter, and that's a challenge for the marketing side of us, right? Because the temptation is to want it to be cookie cutter, to want it to be systematized in a way where it ends up being cookie cutter. We have to watch out for that.
Sure, that's where it is true. It's mesmerizing, and we're struck by the romance of this right now, because things are changing so quickly that we want to take advantage of these things that can save our time. And that's where the drive comes from, to automate human connection. And I'm going to suggest that, I'm just going to flat out say it. Stop using modern technology to facilitate old, outdated strategies. There, I said it.
Feel better?
I do feel better. instead of trying to tiptoe around the whole concept. The point is that you're trying to reach massive amounts of people because that was the way you scaled before. Now, yes, it takes a lot of effort to do that, but that's why you got the results you got, or that's why those people got the results that they got. And if you're trying to replicate that and you're trying to shortcut it by making it go faster so that you can reach more people, this is taught out there. This isn't a new concept, and I'd really like to bring more light to it. If you get the right people, you don't need as many. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So if your marketing strategy can get to the right people, aka your ideal clients, you don't have to reach as many. You don't have to automate as much of that. You can automate the tedious, meticulous tasks. Now, some people are going to say, communicating with some people is tedious and meticulous. That's part of the deal. And that's where the ideal client comes in, because you identify, oh, that's not my ideal client. I need to talk to these people in a way that those people are repelled. I don't want to reach out to all of those people, because then that's what's making me want to automate. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Maybe you won't feel like automating all your human connections if you draw in the right people.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a balance to strike. And like you
Absolutely.
mentioned, every market is different. So it's important to pay attention to that. But it's a game changer to be able to pay attention to it. And keep stock of that for us, for each person as an individual needs to do that. It's important. At the end of the day, you'll be happier.
What's also interesting about that, though, is that when you've defined an ideal client, what you're defining is a human. All right. So that's really key. You're defining a human. Now, right. The context is you're defining that human in a way of a relationship with you. But you can interpose and say, okay, well, why don't I just define myself as an ideal client? What do I want? Where's my next step? Who do I want to help me? What problems do I need solved? I've even gone so far to say as, I think this is a good answer. Does this answer all of these needs that I've identified as a ideal client of this service?
Right. Talking about self-awareness.
Self-awareness. And then also that's getting right into it. Then it's easier to understand how someone else might be looking at it. That's the biggest mistake, is that people think, oh, well, this is how I feel. Everybody else feels that way. Or most everybody else feels that way.
Yep. The beauty of a relationship. Simply ask. Well, yeah, simply ask.
I like that, the relationship that goes along with conversation. Because communication is a little more clinical. So I like that. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to look at adopting that a little bit more. Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.
Because that's the point. You might be trying to communicate with your set of data points, and you'd rather have a conversation with your ideal client.
That's right.
I like that. Sounds good.
Yeah. Conversations are more natural because it's what we do every day as people. It's just that as people, it's easy to forget to ask questions and have dialogue, conversation.
Right, because communication can be super cut and dry. Friday, 3:00? Yes. Boom. Great. See you then. That wasn't much of a conversation.
Right. Right. Yep. So true. So true. Now, Monty, so with this, understanding your ideal client, having communication, what about enhancing our self-presentation? Enhancing how we present. That ties into what we've been talking about.
Absolutely, but it kind of puts the ball in your court. Mr. Carl.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, with your context and perspective, with your human context and perspective,
Right.
36 plus years in the entertainment industry.
37 now. Ha, yeah. Love it.
Yeah, there you go. And that context and perspective, how do you feel that understanding and defining an ideal client helps you present and helps your presence when you're speaking and having a conversation?
I think it's really helpful. From my standpoint, it's helpful because understanding, someone's dreams and challenges. And even before I say that, it's important that for me, I have to check myself to make sure I don't come from a manipulative standpoint. I come from wanting to have a mindset to serve people and look out for people. And so, with that being said, understanding their passions, like what someone's passionate about. Like for me, my ideal client, what is he or she passionate about? Where is he or she trying to go? You know, what what are the challenges? What are the challenges they face? What are the challenges they face today? What were the challenges 6 months ago? You know, it's interesting because for me, I like getting information from people like that. As an introvert, I like that one-on-one communication. So it makes it somewhat easier for me. And for me, it's important to slow down to be able to get that information. But as I have the information, it's helpful for me to present on camera so I can speak specifically to that individual. Even if, like you mentioned, if it's in the Facebook group or if it's on LinkedIn or any of the other platforms or even email, it makes it so much more easier for me to have that conversation. And the word I think about is empathy. It helps me to be able
Great
to
word.
empathize with that individual, which is a game changer, especially in these different industries, to be able to slow down, take my time, and understand where they're coming from and to be able to empathize with them. So huge game changer, Monty.
I like that. The empathy and empathizing. I think that ties that together
Hmm.
For ideal client and personal presence. Because coming from your background, there's the actor and needing to take on personas, needing to play parts.
Right.
And so therefore needing to get inside of somebody's head. And in that circumstance, that somebody is typically a character, a fictitious character that has already been defined, that and you get to just mold yourself to that.
Right.
In this circumstance, we need to do something very similar, but nobody's predefined it for us. We're getting to discover that, which is
Right.
actually kind of the fun and interesting part.
Right.
I'm a data analyst. I really enjoy finding the patterns in data. And
Yeah.
so, yes, we can take a whole group of humans and find some patterns in there.
Right.
But when you overlay the different patterns that you're finding, you start identifying more and more uniquenesses amongst the patterns.
That's the fun
And
part.
and that's the introverted connection part.
Right.
We're not satisfied with just knowing, hey, a bunch of people are afraid of water and a bunch of people are afraid of spiders. So I'm set up to help people with their phobias of water and spiders.
Right.
But there's so much more to that.
Yeah. So much more nuance.
Yeah.
So much. And that's what makes it exciting, because that's a journey. And you think about it, we all love journeys. If you love movies, you love journeys because you're going on a journey. So I think about, it's interesting we mentioned that as far as me, as far as acting or even coming from the entertainment side of things. Yeah, you have to get into a character and you have to know yourself too. You have to be self-aware and know how deep you can go. But also this is a different game right now where it's like with business owners or an ideal client, being able to see where they're at and use your imagination to see where they're at. And it's definitely from the conversation, especially if you can have a conversation. That's one of the things that blows me away the most. I could literally get in a DM with someone or get in a post with someone and have a conversation and see where they're at and pay attention and meet their need. It's simple. And because things are so fast, it's hard to pay attention and do that. But it's such a great journey, Monty,
And
because we're
what
able.
I'm suggesting that you
Mm,
have an extra superpower there. You have 37 years, give or
mm,
take, of practice,
yeah.
of that empathy, of that. What I love to talk about is context and perspective.
Mm,
There's that, hey, I feel this way, so everyone else must feel that way. Well, that's that mistake.
mhm,
That's perspective and context. Even when people say, well, I put myself in their shoes,
yeah.
but that's not enough. What you've done is you've put them into their context, but you don't have their perspective yet.
Right.
You
Right.
need to get into their shoes. They say walk a mile in their shoes. It's like, well, the better thing would be wear their hat, because you need to get in their
Mhm,
head. So the shoes is too far away. That's the
mhm,
context.
yeah.
That's where you are. So that is helpful. And that is one of the steps. That's half of that, context and perspective. So there's just that other side that gets overlooked. It's very difficult.
It's difficult. It is difficult. It's that level of communication. And I love the way you said that. I love the way you broke that down. And the way I break it down sometimes is I say to myself, I can never get in someone's shoes. I tried. You know what I mean? But what that means is that at every turn, I can ask questions. But sometimes it's not time to ask. There's no time to ask questions. I could pay attention to their emotional state. I could pay attention to how they're responding. You know what I mean? So it's like a back and forth dialogue, sometimes without us having the time to speak. That's a reality. But we're already on that journey to have that dialogue. That makes sense?
Right.
I'm getting excited talking about this, man, because it's so and also as far as this, you mentioned the 37 years of being in the entertainment industry. It's absolutely important. That journey has helped me to pay attention to the fact that, okay, as an introvert, on an emotional level, I could make that connection as well. That makes me start to ask questions and stop and slow down and pay attention to where the person's at. Does that make sense? That's been super helpful for me. So yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. This conversation fires me up, man.
Yeah, that, like I said, it's my cup of tea. Really get that context and perspective. That's how my business thrived before I understood all these things. Now I can go back and look at my business and why it thrived, and find those patterns and say,
Mhm.
oh, that is why that thing that I did worked so well. Now I can take the concept and be mindful and intentful and capitalize on it.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's good stuff right there.
Because that's what's great about that. You were talking about, um, it's that deeper connection. Monetary is one thing, and the deeper connection. So all this experience that I'm looking at through this historical journey is, I was just doing it emotionally. I was just doing it because I was in the right context and perspective, and I was getting what I liked. What I called is the yes moment, when I solved a problem for someone and
Right.
they were so overjoyed that they actually gave me a fist bump.
Mhm.
So now when I look back and I want to monetize something, it's like, well, why wouldn't I want to monetize that? I'm already giving people the sensation of success where they give me a fist bump.
Mhm.
If I can turn that into a business, perfect.
Right. There's a lot of treasure there, Monty. That point. You mentioned that yes moment. I like to say aha moments. I like to say connecting the dots.
Right.
and and here's the thing, even being an entertainer, being a businessman, being able to serve people with my talents, if people get blown away, like you're an introvert and you like to be in front of people, I don't love to be in front of people all the time. This is in the context with presentation. I don't love to be in front of people all the time. Sometimes I don't even like to be in front of people, but I'm obsessed with helping them connect the dots. That's been a game changer for me, Monty. And so ideal client to having it, affect how you present. For me, that's been such a game changer for me. And that's where I've gotten to on my journey, being obsessed with helping them connect those dots, because there's nothing like it, Monty.
That's an interesting side road with the introvert part and really identifying your ideal client. Because with the concept of I want to market and I want to sell my services or product or extend my business, whatever it is that you're going to try and do to make a living.
Right.
For an introvert who doesn't want to have 1,000 connections every day, it's scary and overwhelming and undoable. But by identifying and defining an ideal client, you can just focus on talking to one person. And again, like we're talking earlier, when you talk to one person, if there are other people around, they can listen. It's all good.
It's all good.
Maybe they'll even pipe in at the right moment.
Right.
And therefore that might be that second connection. That's okay. I can, like you were saying, you don't necessarily like to be in front of lots of people. What we have is an ability to turn on, and it takes power.
Right.
And so introverts tend to want to recharge so that they can do that when they want to, and be able to recharge so that when they have to, they can.
Right.
But that's the power. We're not, as introverts, we're not at a deficit. It's a different context and perspective.
Yeah. Different context and perspective. Right. 100%.
Yep. They go in hand. Hand
in hand. And being self-aware of that is part of the battle. Part of the game.
That segues in. That's how you're going to improve yourself.
Right. Right. Improving self. And, and that's where we're going next, improving our interactions. Yeah. Ooh, I had a few people ask me, how do you engage with people when you're networking? And that's a great question. And sometimes it's a tough question because I can share from my perspective, but another person was trying to get help in how to engage. And so it's a hard one because it depends on the context, where you're at on camera.
Where both sides are at.
Yeah, where both sides are at. On camera, on stage, in a room where you're just networking with people after an event or before an event.
Well, there's where I was meaning more along where you're at is where you're at in headspace. Before an event, during a break at an event, after an event. Those are just three of many different headspaces.
Right.
How open someone is to receive a message.
Right. That's a whole episode right there.
But that's part of knowing your ideal client.
Right.
And then therefore, because here's the big point. I'll say it right now so I don't forget about it. But knowing your ideal client, and the big point flew out of my head because I called it out. Called it out.
It'll come back.
Yeah. It's as long as I don't try too hard, it will come back.
That's right. But there's something to be said for when you're networking, because it can be a double-edged sword, because you have to know yourself. You have to be self-aware, because if especially if you're an introvert and you're drained, and depending on when the event is and when you're interacting, You want to be genuine, you want to be authentic. And I know from someone like me, it's important that I come across as energetic because I am an energetic person. I just have to pace myself. And I find myself, Monty, even when I'm around people, there's some times where I fizzle out with my energy level. They may be like, "Are you okay?" I've learned to say, "Oh, I'm just pacing myself." And that's been a game changer for me. No matter where I'm at, networking, around people, I'm pacing myself. There's nothing wrong with saying that you're pacing yourself. And that might be something to pay attention to and think about when you're amongst people. When you're on camera, it's different. You have to make sure that your energy levels up and you're connecting with your ideal client because they need to be served. You're there to serve them.
So that ties back through. Great. For the big idea
Mm,
is identifying the headspace of the ideal client. Now, the I guess that's the small idea. The big idea is so that way that you can identify the receptive mode that they are in. And by being able to do that, you can pivot your approach. So perhaps you want to connect and engage with somebody, because that's what brought this on, was how do you engage with somebody? So
right.
it all depends. Is it somebody new? Is it somebody I've met once? Is it somebody that I've had a prior conversation with and I want to strike it back up? So there are just a ton of variations. But where are they now? We're on break at a networking convention. Probably not a great time to ask questions and bring up deep thought.
Right.
Wrong frame of mind. That's pretty extreme and maybe blatantly obvious example.
Well, that's important.
But that way you can actually see that's what we're talking about, because it goes deeper than that. There can just be times when you notice, because you understand your ideal client and they're and it's a one-on-one in this circumstance, and they're not paying attention. Their eyes keep going off screen or something, or they keep looking at their phone or something. Again, then it's like you want to send your message, you want to communicate, but are they ready to receive said communication?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's important to pay attention to cues. Visual cues are important, verbal cues. Like if you're having a conversation, you're networking, if someone seems really drained, or if they're just finishing up their meal or something like that, you don't want to just barrel in and say, "Hey, here are a whole bunch of questions I'm going to ask you." That ain't gonna work. But it's important to be able to see where they're at. And I know for me, like when I'm at networking events, I might ask a few questions, and if it feels like, I'll feel it out, and if they're not willing to answer right off the bat, or if they're not excited, or if they seem drained in their eyes, I'm gonna back off a little bit. If I'm finishing a speaking event, I might be like, "Hey, do you have?" What I like to do is ask, "Do you have any questions for me when I'm presenting, or if I'm sharing, or if I'm training?" I like to say, "Do you have any questions?" I like that because it draws them out. And if they don't have questions, all good. But I gave them that opportunity. But that came from my energy, and they don't have to give their energy so much unless I'm making them rack their brain. I might give them a couple of options to help guide them and lead them. Those seem very simple, but they're so important because that's helping your ideal client along their journey with in where, knowing where they're at. I
Well,
find
and then you can also be a little selfish and say that's going to help you in your communication and your conversations, and then therefore your confidence. Coming back to person asking you, "Hey, I'm struggling with the confidence, and how do you engage
right,
with a variety of different people?" And
right,
that's what's great about that, in a variety of different ways.
right. And
There's
I,
no one way that works for every situation and every person. And that's
yeah,
where needing to understand those, needing to be self-aware and needing to
right.
be ideal client aware. Ooh, I like that.
Ooh, woo. As we say, bars, bars. Those are some bars. Not candy bars, but rap bars. Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, dude.
That might just be the keep it simple
Mm-hmm.
right there. Summing all that up is being your ideal client aware. That's the summary of context and perspective. You just need to
Yes,
be aware of them.
absolutely. Being aware. And I'd add in there that self-awareness as well, because they go hand in hand.
Right. And that ties back to what I was talking about earlier, too. If you have a way of defining an ideal client, if you define yourself in the same way, that's pretty self-aware. That's
Mm-hmm.
another level of self-awareness right there.
It's another level. Another level. I got nothing else to add to that, Monty. That's dead on.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That was a good wrap it up point there.
Nice. Love it. Good stuff, Monty. Good stuff. So, Monty, so if people are wondering, how do I start? How do I start my path with this ideal client stuff? I'm busy. I'm knee deep in doing work, but I need to understand this ideal client concept. Where can they go to find out more about it?
Well, I have started a Facebook group where I'm doing more of this, talking about it, and where people can ask questions. And you can easily navigate there with facebook.copyandcontentsecrets.com, because the ideal client is one of many secrets in creating engaging copy and content.
Love it. Solid.
And on that other side, with that presence and confidence and having conversations and engaging with their audience. If someone is wanting some tips and advice or more knowledge on how they can do those things, where could they go?
CarlAline.com. CarlAline will help you enhance your presence. And
All things Carl.
All things Carl. All things Carl. Boom. So it's been good, Monty. Until next week.
Have a wonderful week.
Have a wonderful week. Talk to you soon.
See ya.